really excited to be here with you guys. It's been several months since I was able to come and share with you, and I always love being here at Converge. I'm a big fan of Converge. I think you guys are an awesome community. Thanks, guys. Feel much better now. And as we get started, Kenny's going to hand out to you guys some packets, and hopefully there's enough pens floating around. But I'm going to hand you guys some packets, just a couple pages for you guys to follow along and take notes. Because at heart, I'm a teacher. I love to teach, and I hope that tonight you guys leave equipped and understanding what missional communities are all about. So as those come around, you guys can take a look at those and follow along as we go through tonight. I work here at the church at Mosaic, and my job on staff here at the church is really to train and equip people to think like missionaries. And so I was really super excited to hear what Kenny shared last week. I got online on the Facebook page, Converge Facebook page, and listened to the sermon. And I think that's really cool that you guys do that and allow me to be able to listen to Kenny share and come in tonight kind of knowing what you guys heard last week. So it was awesome what he shared, and I thought he did a great job of walking you guys through the idea of Jesus is a missionary. And that's central to laying the foundation for. If we're going to talk about missional communities, we've got to understand first that Jesus is a missionary, that he was sent by the Father on mission to rescue us. And so we start there. So I want to talk a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about is just kind of a recap on some of your thoughts based on what Kenny shared last week. What is a missionary? Let's talk through together a little bit. What is a missionary? So that to you guys, hear from you guys. And tonight's going to be a lot of dialogue. I want to hear a lot from you guys. So don't be shy. Throw it out there if you have a thought. So what is a missionary?
You don't have to raise your hand.
They travel.
They travel? Okay. Someone who travels? Travels to do what? To share the gospel? Yeah. Anything else? What is a missionary?
Meet the needs of the people.
Meet the needs of people? Yeah. Anything else?
To add to the idea of travel, they're sent.
Yeah, someone who's sent. Sent to share the gospel. I like that. Anybody else? What is a missionary?
Someone who is on mission.
Yeah.
Maybe local.
Yeah. Someone on mission. Yeah, as you guys talked about last week, Jesus was on mission. He was on mission to come reveal the Father, share about the kingdom, and ultimately make the sacrifice for us, right? So what else? Any other thoughts on what a missionary is? What are some of the things when you think of a foreign missionary, someone who goes from one country to another country? What are some of the things that they have to do?
Learn the language.
Yeah, learn the language. What else? What else do they have to learn?
Understand the culture.
Language, culture. Anything else?
They make sacrifices.
Yeah, great. They sacrifice. Depending on the context, they sacrifice a lot. There's a pastor that I like to read his blog. He has a lot of good stuff on there. His name's Todd Engstrom, and he says that a missionary is someone who sacrifices everything except for the gospel for the sake of the gospel. And I thought that was such a great, clear definition of what a missionary is. That a missionary is someone who sacrifices everything except for the gospel for the sake of the gospel.
That's good.
So if we build on that idea of that a missionary is all about the gospel, whether it's in this context, in this culture, or in another culture, we're going to do a little exercise together to think through why missional community is important, why we should want to be missionaries, whether we're here locally or whether we're going globally, why we should want to be all about the gospel, all about mission. So before we jump into this exercise, real quick, let me see. I'm going to kind of do another little inventory here. We did an inventory of influence for the icebreaker. Now I want to do inventory, kind of what you guys' backgrounds are. If you have been in church, any church, whether it's Mosaic or whatever church, it doesn't matter. If you've been a part of a church for more than a year, raise your hand. Right? If you've been a part of a church for more than 3 years, raise your hand. If you've been a part of a church for more than 5 years, raise your hand. If you've been a part of a church for more than 10 years, raise your hand. If you've been a part of a church for all of your life, raise your hand. Since the womb. No. Okay, cool. Awesome. That helps me to kind of know. But for the most part, it looks like a lot of us have been in church for a long, long time. So this exercise should be pretty cool. We're going to talk about community. And we're going to talk about these 4 things that are on your sheet. Where, when, what, and how. Okay? So when we're thinking about community and how community happens or where community happens, I want us to think about the church first. Okay? Where does community happen for us as Christians, as in the church world? Many of you have been in church since the womb, so you should know how this goes. Where does community happen for church?
In the building.
All right, in the building. Where else? In the church building or at homes?
At fellowship lunches.
Fellowship lunches. But the where? Pretty much we can narrow it down. I think when asked this question, most Christians would say in the church building or in someone's home. It's kind of we've gotten used to that idea of that's where community happens. What about when? When does community happen?
Sundays.
All right, Sundays. When else?
Evenings.
Midweek, evenings. Anybody else? That's pretty much it. Sundays and Wednesdays. That's it. Sundays and Thursdays. I'm sorry for converting. Sundays and Thursdays. Okay, so we would say set times and days. In the church, we're all about community and set times, set days. Sunday at 10 and Thursday at 8. Whatever. So, what does the church do? What does community look like when it comes together as what does community talk about? When you gather in community in the church, what do we talk about in church community?
Food.
Food? Okay. Yeah. What's your favorite drink? What else? What do you guys talk about here on Thursday nights at Converge?
Who Jesus is.
Yeah, Jesus. So God, Jesus, Bible. Is there anything else that we talk about? What about in that, if you're in another type of setting, if you're in someone's home and you're doing church community, what do you guys talk about?
Talk about life in general.
Yeah, live. Anything else?
Prayer requests.
Prayer requests? Yeah. Okay. Now, how about the how? How do we do community in church? And what I mean by this is when we're in community, like right now, what does it look like? How are you guys gathered for community right now, if you look around?
Lecture style.
Yeah, you're in rows. What are some of the other ways we gather for community?
Meals.
Circle.
Yeah, so rows and circles. Rows and circles. All right, so there you go. If you do these things, you got a church. You got church community, right? All right, now we're going to do another inventory, same questions. This time we're going to talk about the world. People that we know that aren't in church. So people that aren't a part of church community, people in community outside of church, where do they do community?
Everywhere.
The gym,
Bars.
bars. Everyone always says bars.
Sporting events.
Because anyone who's not in church is a drunk.
They must be bars.
Bars. Gym. Someone said everywhere.
Sporting events.
Yeah.
Restaurants.
sporting events.
House parties.
House parties, so they do meet in homes. But it's, so the where is everywhere, right? Community can happen. Does community happen in your workplace on some level? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if you worked there for a long time, might have some community. Back in the day, people used to have community in their neighborhoods. Not so much anymore, but some neighborhoods, depends on the neighborhood. But okay, let's talk about when. When does community happen for people outside the church?
After work.
After work or at work?
Weekends.
Weekends? Anytime else? Is it set times and days, or is it more sporadic?
Sporadic.
Okay. So, varies, sporadic, nights. Sorry, so nights, weekends, very sporadic. Now it's kind of hard to see down here, but and then how? How does we talk about the church does it in rows and circles. What about the world? How do they do community? Do they do it in rows and circles when they're at the bars or the gym, or they're everywhere?
It's usually around the table or...
In the garage.
There's usually not a focal point.
Okay, good. There's usually not a focal point, right? If you're thinking about community outside the church, it's usually around an activity. If you're in a sporting league, if you're playing, in a basketball team, or if you're, at a bar, and you're watching the game, it's usually around something other than a row or circle, right? So you're having community as you're barbecuing or grilling or whatever. So around activities. Okay. So how different are these lists? How the church does community, how the world does community?
Structured and unstructured.
Yeah, structured and unstructured. Very different, right? What we tend to do in the church, this is how we do community. Then we meet someone at work or at school, and this is how they do community. And then to try to reach them for Christ, we ask them to jump out of this rhythm and jump into this rhythm. Hey, can you come to my Bible study on Thursday night? Or can you come to Conversion Thursday night? Or can you come to church with me on Sunday morning or Saturday night? We ask them to come into our structured, set times, set places, rows and circles, to talk about things that they don't talk about. Oh, that's one of the ones we didn't get there. What are some of the things that the world talks about? We talked about what we talk about. Does the world talk about the same things? What are some of the things the world talks about?
Gossip.
Food, gossip, one another, other people.
TV
What else?
shows.
What?
TV shows.
TV shows, movies,
Music.
music, sports, entertainment.
Sports.
What else?
Sports.
Sports,
Politics.
news, current events, fashion, whatever, right? Whatever they're into, whatever they're interested in. So we asked them to come in and to our group to talk about God's use in the Bible, and they're used to talking about sports, fashion and news or whatever. So they're talking about their set of things. So it's really two different cultures, and we're asking them to come into our culture and adapt to our culture. So in this paradigm, the way that we do, who are we asking to be the missionary? I heard a few people say them, right? We're asking them to leave their world and come into ours and adapt to our culture and our rhythms. We're asking them to be the missionary. But we've learned last week through Kenny that we're called to be missionaries. We're called to be on mission to the world. So that's what missional communities are all about. Missional communities is simply a group of people that are believers that are on mission together and that are finding ways to get out of this rhythm so that they can reach people in this rhythm, so that they can go and be a part of the everyday life of people that need to know Christ, people that are outside the church, people that need to be reached for Him, right? So we're going to talk through first the framework for why missional communities, like why we're doing this or how we're doing this, right? And then we're going to talk about some of the more practical things. Let me just erase this real quick. All right, if you guys look on your sheet there's a couple things at the bottom that says, on the first page, it says our vision and our mission. For us as a church, which includes you guys as Converge, that our vision as a church is that we want to demonstrate our passion for God and His passion for people. And our mission is that we want to make the gospel known and we want to make disciples locally and globally, right? So that's our heart and that's our goal. That we want to let people know, let the world know that we are passionate about God and that because we're passionate about God, we're passionate about people. And so when we talk about how the world does community, and as we begin to form missional communities as a church, we're commissioning and sending those missional communities to go out into those rhythms of everyday life and demonstrate their passion for God and their passion for people and to make the gospel known, to make disciples locally and globally. All right, so if you guys want to flip to the second page of your notes there, we're going to talk about the framework, which the framework is gospel, identity, mission. So in order for us as a community, so if you guys Converge, if you guys begin to take steps to become a missional community, you've got to understand the gospel, your identity, and your mission. And I know because of the things that you guys have talked about here at Converge that many of this you guys are familiar with. Many of this, and also because many of you raised your hands and you've been in church for a long time. So you understand a lot of this, but we believe that going back to the gospel is always helpful. That is not something that we get one time and then forget it and never look at it again. That I'm constantly encouraged every time I go back and look at the gospel, and every time I'm reminded of the implications of the gospel. So we're going to look at that real quickly, real briefly tonight. So if you could imagine the world as it should be, what would it be like? I want to hear some things from you guys. If you could imagine the world as it should be, what would it be like?
Peaceful.
Peaceful? Okay. Anybody else?
Orderly.
Orderly?
No injustice.
All right, no injustice, no poverty, no
Safe.
human trafficking, safe,
Happy.
happy,
I'd say loving.
loving, yeah,
Healthy.
healthy, no sickness, no disease. Anything else? What would the world look like in relationship between man and God? What would that look like if it was as it should be? What?
I said intimate.
Intimate?
That people would be unified about what God is the true God.
Yeah, that's a good one. Unified about the true God. Anything else?
Think of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, great. Garden of Eden, people walked with God, and Adam and Eve walked with God and knew God. Yeah, great. So, the reason why we can list off those things is because all of us, as humans, even if you ask someone who's not a believer, not a Christian, this question, they will be able to list things like disease, poverty, injustice. Why? Because there's an innate sense in us as human beings that something's not right in the world. And that is why the gospel is such good news, because it answers that thing that we all have inside, that there's something wrong in the world. And we all can say there's this list of things that if the world was like this, it would seem like that's the way it should be. So here's a definition of the gospel that I love. It's from a preacher named Tim Keller. It says, the gospel is the good news that God himself came to rescue and restore all of creation through the work of Jesus Christ on our behalf. Let me say it one more time for you guys, if you were taking notes. The gospel is the good news that God himself came to rescue and restore all of creation through the work of Jesus Christ on our behalf. And that's what we're talking about when you guys listed those things, is the good news of the gospel is that God came to restore those things. God came to do something about the lack of peace, the lack of joy, the lack of health, the lack of all these things that were the brokenness in our world. He came to rescue and restore that. So we're going to talk through a couple of the different ways that we see the gospel, that we can explain the gospel to understand why this is such good news. It's such rich. And there's actually 3 ways, if you guys look on your sheet, there's 3 ways we can talk about it. 1 is the gospel doctrine, 2 is the gospel story, and 3 are these gospel lenses. So these are just helpful ways that I hope will help you guys. If you dig into this and learn these, that you'll be able to explain the gospel to people in really effective ways. So, gospel doctrine. We have regeneration, justification, sanctification, glorification. Big words, sounds like a headache, right? But when you actually understand what these words mean, it's awesome. It's amazing to be able to get the meaning of them, to be able to know what the good news about these are. So regeneration. What that means is that something dead was made alive. It was regenerated. So when we talk about regeneration, it's the belief, it's the idea that God came to restore our life, our spiritual life, that we were dead and Jesus came to give us life, that he came to restore that life. Justification. It means that if you're guilty and then you go before the judge and you're found not guilty, if you're arrested and they think you're guilty and you go before the judge and they find you not guilty and you're released, then you're justified. And that's what it means, is that Jesus came so that we could be justified, so that we could be set free, so that we could have restored freedom and restored right relationship with God, that we'd be found not guilty. Even though we were guilty, he took our place so that we could be found not guilty. And then sanctification. It means that something is set apart. It means that something has a restored purpose. And so when Jamin mentioned the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, we were created to know God and to make him known, to enjoy fellowship with him. And so that purpose that was lost, or that was tainted or damaged, it can be restored through Jesus Christ. And then glorification means that we're going to have complete restoration at the end. That means that one day, when we're in heaven before Jesus, as it talks about in Revelation, there will be no more tears, no more disease, no more injustice. And so there will be that final and complete restoration. That's glorification. So these terms, when you start to dig into the meaning of them, suddenly it comes to life. At least for me it does that. Wow, this is ridiculous. We have restored life. We have restored freedom. We have restored purpose. We have restored complete restoration when we get to heaven one day, right? So it makes the gospel, it reminds us that it's good news, that it's relevant to our lives. The gospel story is another way to present it. If you talk about what happened in creation, as Jamin mentioned earlier, then the fall, what happened, where did it go wrong in the story? What went wrong in the story? And then the rescue, that Jesus came to rescue us, and the restoration, that our life in Christ is about restoring all these things. And then finally, the gospel lenses, that when we look at the gospel, we understand that the gospel, it's about the power of God to rescue us, to take us from death to life, from slavery to freedom, from isolation to family. So it's about the power to rescue. It's about the purpose to restore, that God wants to restore us as image bearers, as people who make God known, and that he wants to restore our relationship to God, he wants to restore our relationship to each other, and he wants to restore our relationship to the rest of creation. That now that our jobs don't have to be about just working to make a paycheck, but that we have purpose in that we have a job to do to glorify him in all of creation, in what we do every day, as mundane as it may seem. So, when we understand those 3 different ways of viewing the gospel and 3 different ways of explaining the gospel, we can begin to find ways to share that with others. And we want to, first of all, learn how to preach that to ourselves, to remind ourselves of the good news, and then to be able to frequently share it with others. And when we dig into the gospel, we begin to understand that because of if these things are true, then that means that our motivations and our identity should be different, that we find that they are different, that because these things are true, now we're able to love God, we're able to love people, we're able to serve the world, not out of religious duty, but because of the good news of the gospel, that all these things are true, that we've been restored in all these areas. And so now that restoration results in us loving God out of true affection and loving people out of genuineness and authenticity. That results in us serving the world because we've been served by the King of Kings, right? And so that also impacts our identity, that where the world tells us our identity should be wrapped up in so many other things, the gospel informs us that our identity is actually family, that we can love God and we can be family, that He's our Father. He's adopted us as sons and daughters, and so we're a family. How does that impact and change us if you guys look around this room at Converge and you start to view each other as family? It's not just random people that you get together with on Thursday, but family of God. And that we're disciples, that we are called to follow and to look like Jesus, to be like Jesus. And that we are missionary servants, that we're on mission to serve the world and to serve the needs of the world, the spiritual needs, the physical needs, to be a part of God's plan to restore, right? So then finally, if the gospel is true, and that means this is our motivations and our identity, then finally we get to our mission. Our mission is that we want to demonstrate the gospel, we want to declare the gospel, and we want to make disciples. Okay? Everybody with me? Cool. All right, so that was a lot. But I wanted to run that quickly through that because this next part that we're going to spend the next 15, 20 minutes going over is where we get into the practical stuff. But I wanted to go through that foundation, that framework, because that's the foundation, that's the framework for us to live out missional communities. It's out of the overflow of constantly being reminded of the gospel, of our identity, and our mission by which we're going to live out missional community. If we don't have that framework, this is what you guys are going to do, and what all of our missional communities are going to do, is we're going to try to live it out in our own strength. We're going to try to live it out of religious duty, and we're going to say, oh, I'm doing this thing this week because I know I'm supposed to. And those of you that have grown up in church, how often have you found that to be true? That if you've got to, you know it's the right thing to do. You've heard it your whole life in Sunday school or in small group or in Bible study. Oh, I should be telling people about Jesus, so I need to try to check that off the list somehow, even though I don't really want to. I need to, remember to pray for someone, so I'm going to set an alarm and try to remember to pray for someone, but I don't really want to, those kind of things. But if we go back to the gospel, go back to our identity, go back to our mission, we constantly go back to that framework and live out of that framework, then missional community should be a more natural byproduct, should be something that we're not forced to do or have to do, but it's something that is born out of these things being true in our hearts and our minds and our lives. Okay? So let's look at some of the practicals. You guys go to the third page. I love this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. This is the paradigm shift. For us to put the framework that we talked about, rescue, identity, mission, or gospel, identity, mission, for us to put that framework into practice, this is the paradigm shift, okay? Church is not an event. It's a community, okay? So Converge, what you guys are doing here, it's not just an event. It's meant to be a community. Mission is not an event. It's a lifestyle. Mission is a lifestyle. It's not something you do 1 week during the summer or on your spring break. Mission is a lifestyle every day. We are called to live ordinary life with gospel intentionality. This is by a guy named Tim Chester, a pastor in England. He wrote this book called Total Church. Phenomenal book. All right, so we want to talk about ordinary life with gospel intentionality. So we're going to talk about some rhythms and some practices. Daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Daily, weekly, yearly. Okay, I'm not going to try to write down everything, but we'll write down a few things. But first, all right, what are some of the things that you guys do on a daily basis?
Eat.
Eat, yes. We all eat on a daily basis.
It's good.
What else?
Work,
Eat and work. Yep.
school,
Yep.
Socialize.
Socialize. Yep.
I tweet.
Yeah.
I tweet
Social
daily.
media. Socialize / social media. All right. Are these things that non-Christians do? non-believers, people outside the church.
Yeah.
Except
What?
except eat.
Except eat? Yeah, no, they weekly. What are some of the things that you guys do weekly?
Grocery shop.
Grocery shop? I'll just put shop, 'cause that could be.
Clean.
Anybody else?
Clean.
What?
Clean.
Clean, sorry. Got bad hearing. Clean, what else?
It's a monthly.
Yeah.
Church is a good one for research.
Church? Yeah.
Go out with friends.
Yeah. Yeah, exercise, it could be daily for some people, it could be weekly for others, it could be monthly for some, like yearly for me. All right, cool. Some of these things people outside the church do, and so you can see some opportunities to be on mission. What about monthly?
Yeah, that's fine.
What else?
Travel maybe?
Travel? I'll put that yearly too, because for some people, travel yearly. What else? Monthly rhythms?
Holidays.
Yeah. Some holidays. I'll put that here, because that's yearly holidays. Anything else monthly that people do? Guys think of? All right, cool. Some people, depending on, I would say some people either weekly or monthly, like trying to think of people outside the church, and people inside the church too, but you might go to shows or concerts, or you might go to, out to the bar with friends, or you might go different things, events that come up. So maybe we'll put like monthly events, concerts, or things happening in the community. Okay, yearly. Any other yearly? Christmas? Yeah, holiday? Taxes.
Birthdays?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind
birthday.
of holidays, but
Yeah.
Yearly laundry.
Vacay.
there's only two things that are
Birthday, travel, holiday, vacation.
Visit family.
Yeah, family. Yeah, depending on if your family's in the area or not, you might see them yearly, or you might see them daily or weekly, depending on where they're at. Yeah. Monthly?
Like haircuts or nails.
Yeah.
Make a socialization with your
We should go get our nails. Me, mani pedi.
haircuts with your stylist.
That's a good one, Brittany. Haircuts, nails, those kind of things.
Golf.
Month, where would that fit in?
recreation.
I do that monthly.
Monthly? Cool.
Recreational events, sporting events.
Recreation.
Those are weekly.
It might be seasonally.
Maybe they're weekly. Depending on the season.
Sports, maybe weekly. Recreation, we'll say recreation as far as golf or things those kind of things. Going to the lake, going to the beach. Might happen often. Movies? Or did you guys put for some people weekly, some people
Let's say
monthly?
weekly on average.
For you?
Well, it might be closer to daily for me, but
Oh, this is a good list. This is a good list for us to work through. So, what we want to do is to begin to think about. Earlier we took that inventory of our circles of influence of, where we're going to school or we're going to work. Think about the rhythms that exist in your circles of influence. What are the things that are happening daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and how can you begin to live some of those out in gospel intentionality? So we eat daily, so in a month there's lots of opportunities to eat with someone, to grab lunch with someone, or go out to dinner with someone, or have breakfast with someone. So those are things that people normally do, and so we can invite them into that, or go, say, hey, let's go grab breakfast. It's not weird, we all got to eat, right? So thinking through these rhythms, and that's just one example, thinking through what are the things you're already doing, or the people in your circle of influence are already doing. So if you know that the people you work with like to play, like to go play golf once a month, you go play golf with them. They like to play volleyball, you go play volleyball with them. I know Converge is all about volleyball, so finding those things, finding those monthly, weekly rhythms, things that you can do with them to build a relationship. Make sense? So what we want to do is we want to think about, how can we practice the monastic and the missional. If you guys look at your sheet, the missional, for us, one way to look at it is that, that we want to find ways to love our neighbor, we want to find ways to serve our city, we want to find ways to make disciples. And so we're looking for to be missional, so we're looking for ways that in these rhythms that we have, how can we do it with gospel intentionality? How can we find ways in these monthly rhythms and yearly and weekly to love our neighbor, to serve our city, to make disciples in our circles of influence? And then in the monastic, the monastic is what we at Mosaic are, talking about the biblical community. So when you gather with Christians, when you come together on Thursday nights for Converge, in many ways you guys are coming to engage in the monastic. You're coming to engage with the Spirit of God, the Word of God, and the community of God. You guys are the community of God. So you're coming to spend time together, and you're coming to hear from the Word of God, and you're coming to listen to the Spirit, to speak to your hearts through the Word of God and through each other. And so you guys are coming here on Thursday nights to practice that rhythm of monastic, and that's great. Keep doing it. So what you would want to do is now begin to say, okay, we already got this Thursday rhythm of the monastic. How do we add into our lives the missional? How do we find ways in these rhythms to be intentional with the gospel? Okay? So one way that we are encouraging to find some opportunities to do this give you some examples. It takes so long to erase this thing.
You need a bigger eraser.
I know. More picture erasers. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 places. Okay, the MC Family Mill, the Life Transformation Group, and the third place. How am I doing on time?
There are about 10 minutes left.
Okay. All right, so the MC Family Mill, Missional Community Mill. This is where you guys would get together a couple times a month to enjoy a meal together. This could be, because of the size of your community, you may have multiple of these. You may have 2 or 3. Find some houses or find some places. It doesn't have to be a house. You can do it at Chili's. But get together and have a meal together and share your stories with one another. Share what's going on in your life. Talk about what's happening as far as your life on mission. Encourage one another. This is part of that practicing the monastic. You have some of that here in Converge, but this will be just another way to do that, to find that family time to even connect even more, even deeper, right? And so what you may do is, you guys come to Converge on Thursday nights, maybe afterwards you go and grab a bite to eat together in groups, and you're able to share with one another even more. Hey, this is what's happening at my job. This is what's happening with this coworker that I've been getting to know and looking for opportunities to encourage. Okay? So the family meal, a couple times a month. Life Transformation Group. This is where you guys would get together in groups of 2 or 3, preferably around 3 people is kind of the hope. Same gender. So guys would get together, girls would get together. And this is where you guys would be practicing discipleship. When we're talking about we want to make disciples. So you get together for coffee, you get together for breakfast or lunch or whatever. But you're getting together a couple times a month to be able to share even more than you would share with a bigger group. With 2 or 3 people that you're willing to be close with and willing to share with, and say, this is where I want to grow in my walk with Christ, or this is what I'm learning. You may get together and say, hey, we're going to read through a book of the Bible together, and when we come together a couple times a month, we're going to discuss what we're learning, what God's speaking to us, and how we're trying to obey that. Okay? So that's the Life Transformation Group. Then the third place, this is what we were talking about with when we did the community exercise and seeing how the world does community versus how we do community. So find ways throughout the month that you guys as a converged community can find some third places. So maybe that's Tijuana Flats. Our student ministries has often gone to Tijuana Flats on Wednesday nights afterwards. And some of the leaders from student ministries, this is a story that Tiffany was telling me, some of the leaders, because they went there so often, they were able to start getting to know some of the waitresses there and being able to start sharing with them Christ. And so it's those kind of things. A third place is a place that is a social space, a place where you can get to know people. And we have lots of those in our life, you know, like could be, where is it that people like to go hang out? Another example that I love that's happening in our church is with our Disney campus. So our Disney campus, you know, was started to reach Disney cast members. And so from the time that it started as a missional community, as a small life group. People, some cast members, some not, but saying, we have a heart to reach cast members. So they started to reach after cast members and invite them into their community. And then what happened was they began to learn and notice and see that cast members, Disney cast members, on their day off of work, love to go hang out at Disney. Like, what are we going to do on our day off? Oh, we got a season, you know, we got passes for whenever we want to go, so let's go and hang out on our day off. So those people that were part of the missional community began to, what did they begin to do? They began to go to Disney on with those cast members that they're trying to reach on their day off, and just walk around Disney, hang out. You know, even though they've been there a million times, go and watch the same show that they've seen 50 times. But why? Because they're on mission to reach those cast members. And that's a social space where they can go and do life with them and be, you know, grow in the relationship with them and be able to encourage Christ in their life. So those are the kind of third places that you figure out. If your circle of influence is your school, what are the people doing in your classes that you're getting to know, or in your dorms, you know, whatever? Who are you getting to know? What are their rhythms? What are they doing? And what are those social spaces? And you may have multiple third places. But what I would encourage you to do as a converged community is to find some that you can invite each other into. So let's say some of you have a friend who's not in part of church. You know, you're trying to you know, be in their life, to be on mission in their life, and you know that they go and, let's just use the golf example. They go and play golf. So you ask a couple of other guys from Converge, hey, let's go with this guy and play golf. That would be an example of how you're going to go to a third place, you're going to go to a social space, hang out. Maybe it's that you're going to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch mixed martial arts fighting. You know, maybe it's that you're going to go, I don't know, what do girls do? I keep giving guys examples. What are some of the things girls do?
Shopping.
We're going to go shopping together. We're going to go watch a movie together. We're going to go, I don't know, get our nails done together. I don't know. So find those third places, those social spaces where you can do the things that they're doing. You can be involved in their rhythms. You can be a missionary. Because that's what missionaries do. When missionaries go from here to another country, they go learn the language and the culture and the rhythms, and they begin to do life with those people. So if they're in a remote village, and what the remote village does is, you know, have to go wash their laundry down at the river, then those missionaries are going to be down there so that they can socialize with them and do that with them. You know, if it's farming or construction or whatever it is that the community needs, they're going to be there so they can have that platform. If it's in a city, you know, it's just like our life here. That the missionaries, it's not much different than what we're doing here. Figuring out what the people who aren't in church, where they're at, and go to them. If it's in the market, if it's in the workplace, if it's in the social spaces, right? So that's what I encourage you guys to do. That's the journey towards missional community. So here's the questions to consider. And these are things that I want you guys to take home and consider about your life. Who are you currently in community with, both inside and outside the church? So take an honest inventory of who you're in community with. Who is the specific pocket of people that you are being sent to? This is a huge question to answer, and it's not always an easy question to answer. So really pray through this one. Who is God sending you to? Is it the people that you work with at your job? Is it the people that you go to school with? Is it the people in your apartment complex? Is it the people that you are still friends with from high school? I don't know. But you've got to answer that. Who is it that God's calling you to? Who are those people you're being sent to? Who is your neighbor? And then who is your team? Hopefully, some of you will answer that Converge is your team. And that's kind of what it means to be a missional community, is that you would say, all right, Converge is my team that I'm on mission with, and Converge is your missional community. For me, like Andy announced, I have my missional community here with me tonight. That's who I'm trying to live life on mission with. So answer, who is your team? What does it look like to tangibly demonstrate the gospel to this group of people? Think through the people that when you answer who you're sent to, if it's your coworkers, what does it look like to demonstrate the gospel to those coworkers? And then what does it look like to creatively declare the gospel to those coworkers? We talked about the 3 ways to explain the gospel. I encourage you guys to dig into that. Another resource that I would highly encourage, if you haven't listened to Renault's series on carrying the gospel, it was January last year, Jeff? Was it January last year? I don't know, but you can go to Mosaic's website and go to media. If you search through the series, it's like the second page. It says carrying the gospel. Renault talks about active kindness, active listening, active wondering, and active sharing. It's a phenomenal series on what it looks like to demonstrate the gospel and declare the gospel to people in our lives. So, okay, last page here. Learning from Starbucks. I found this list online and I was just blown away by this list. And I used to work at Starbucks, but I'd forgotten about these values. So these are Starbucks values, and I just want you guys to listen to these. Imagine if we just lived, forget everything else I've said, don't forget it, but let's just say you forgot everything I said and you just lived Starbucks values, you would be extremely missional, extremely, okay? Be welcoming. So in those circles of influence that you have at your workplace, in your school, in your class, be welcoming. Offer everyone a sense of belonging. When new people come to Converge, be welcoming. Offer them a sense of belonging. Make them feel like they belong here. Be genuine. Connect, discover, respond. Connect with their life, ask them about their life. Discover who they are, and then respond to that. Be knowledgeable. Love what you do and share it with others. And I took this as be knowledgeable about God's Word, about the gospel, about the good news. Love the truth of the good news of the gospel and share it with others. If you're knowledgeable about it and you really understand how awesome the good news of the gospel is, you're going to want to share it. Be considerate. Take care of each other. Here in this Converge community, take care of each other. If you find out someone's having this struggle or having a hard time with this thing or needs a ride or needs help with this, be there for one another. And take care of our city. Find ways that you can add value to our city. If there's a need, for example, public schools, every public school in the city looking for mentors for kids in public school. If you guys volunteered your time, you'd be adding value to our city. You'd be taking care of the needs of our city. So tons and tons of kids that don't have fathers or have broken homes or just struggle to learn, or parents that both parents work and they're never around. There's kids with a lot of, anyways. Last thing, be involved. Connect with one another and with others in your local and global community. We live in a world where, because of social media, we talked earlier about, social media, that's one of our rhythms of life, that all of us daily are on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Like, we have a huge opportunity to be connected with people locally and globally and to be salt and light. Okay, so a couple of missional opportunities, locally and globally. These are just some examples. I know you guys have talked about some of these before at Converge. So if you want more information about those, come talk to me, come see me. So here's the last thing. For over the next 4 weeks, this is my suggestion to you guys if you guys want to begin to implement some of these rhythms. So number 1, read through the book of Acts together. Read it 1 chapter per day. And then get together in those life transformation groups that I talked about. So call up a couple of guys or call up a couple of girls. Say, hey, let's grab coffee and let's talk about the book of Acts. Talk about what we're learning. Do that a couple times. Do that a couple times throughout this next 4 weeks. Gather over a meal twice in someone's home to share stories with one another. So we talked about that, the family meal. what we like to do with our missional community is we like to have these, what we call cooking days, where everyone comes together, cooks together, and we get to eat a lot of good food. So we just make a day of it. So do something like that if you want. Gather somewhere, not in a home. So this is that third place that we're talking about. Get together. Here's the thing, it doesn't have to be all of you. It doesn't have to be all 30 of you or whatever. If it's 7, 8, 9 of you, whatever, go hang out at Disney or go hang out at, wherever it is that, find a third place that you guys can gather at. Pick something that you're going to do together. Downtown Winter Garden, whatever. And then meet with a missional community coach. And I'll just throw this out there. That would be, if you want to meet with Andy or you meet with Kenny, meet with me. Let us know if you want to talk more about wrestling through what your mission is. For you personally or for you guys as a group. If you have ideas, if you have things, let us know. All right, so that's what I have for you guys. If you guys begin to implement those 4 things, that will be taking the first step towards becoming a missional community.